studios that were around in those days were nothing like today's studios. Today's studios are sheer luxury. I mean, you walk in and there's carpets up to your chin. And, I mean, these were really funny old places, some of these. Olympic Sound Studios, which is what this little bit of film with Jimmy Page is about, is where I filmed Jimmy arriving that day at the studio. Olympic Sound was a vast place, but there was no nicety about it. I mean, there was dirty old carpets on the floor. The walls were clad with sacking, which had been filled with some sort of foam or something like that. I don't know what was inside them, to deaden everything down. There was, you know, I mean, there was absolutely no sort of
basic acoustics.
The acoustics were quite fun. They were quite fun, but they were never places that they are now, that are treated as luxury hotels almost. You know, you couldn't order a smoked salmon sandwich up there, not like you can now, and a glass of champagne. And we did a 3-hour session in those studios. We usually did 4 titles in 3 hours, and I think the fee for that at the time was £7.50, which was a lot of money in those days. That was 1963. I mean, it was a hell of a lot of money. And Jimmy and the two Jims and myself and all the other guys, my colleagues, we were doing 3, sometimes 4 sessions a day. And we were making absolute fortunes, absolute fortunes. Now, when I look back now, it's laughable. But, of course, it was relative to that period. You know, when you could get a pint of beer for, you know, a shilling or something, or whatever it was in old money. The studios themselves, some of the, like EMI, for example, number 2, again, was a barn. But it was probably a bit more upmarket barn than Olympic Sound or any of the smaller studios. In fact, the smaller studios, like Regent Sound in Denmark Street, where the Stones did 1 or 2 recordings, their soundproofing was, in fact, egg boxes nailed to the wall. That was the soundproofing.
So very high tech.
Oh, incredible, really. But they got the sound, they got the feel, and today everything is very, very, very clean, and everything's very well recorded, but sometimes it lacks
be a little clinical.
It is a bit clinical. Yeah,
there's not the spontaneity or love of music, I don't think, in a lot of the modern records.
No, they're aiming for perfection in sound and things. But most of the studios we worked in were of the same ilk. They weren't designed to be luxury places for musicians to play in. They were just fundamentally places you went along to, did 3 hours and went off to the next funny little hole with egg boxes nailed to the wall.
Actually, you get mentioned in this month's Classic Rock. As you know, all the magazines feature the Led Zeppelin reunion of Jimmy Page. But in a separate issue, I think it's by the Pretty Things, the guy mentions going down to the studio with you and recording a few things. I've brought it along for you to have a look at, but it's...
Yeah, I actually produced the Pretty Things.
So that would be the link, yeah.
Yeah, that happened purely by accident. I just happened to be in Philips recording studios in Stanhope Place, and I just finished a session, was getting my gear out, and the head of artists and repertoire there was a man called Jack Baverstock, and Jack was knocking on then, and he couldn't relate to the groups of that period at all. You know, he just couldn't relate to their music. And the Pretties were, although they were really a great feel band, again, for blues especially, they were very difficult to control. Many's the session where the drummer has collapsed through abuse of alcohol, and I've had to take over and play on there and produce. But it worked.
Yes.
You know, it was quite strange, really, where the drummer would curl up in a ball and have a sleep on the floor whilst I did some recording for him. You know. So the Pretties, we had about 2 or 3 hits with them, and I can't remember if it was 1 or 2 albums with them now. So I had quite a lot of involvement with them, yeah. Yeah. Phil May was the singer, Dick Taylor the guitar player. I think 1 or 2 of them are no longer with us, but that doesn't surprise me. The amount of alcohol and imbibed at the time. If it was illegal, immoral or fattening, we wanted it and plenty of it. You know, it's as simple as that. But I had some great times on recordings. I had some bad times as well, because, you know, when you can't read, and Jimmy Page would tell you this as well, when you can't read music and you're thrown into a huge film session where you really are, you've got to rely on reading that chart, the nerves that start to set in before you go into the session, especially when you see your part that looks like 2 million crows sitting on telegraph wires.
Yes.
And you think, I can't even get started with this. But again, both Jimmy and I had this thing about, we would listen to what the run-through was, play very quietly until we realised what everybody was supposed to be doing, and then basically it was there. It was locked into the brain then, apart from perhaps one or two other bits and bobs that soon sorted out on another run-through. So we did get away with it.
Well, I mentioned to him reading music when I spoke to him recently, and he just smiled. So I suspect everybody who grew up teaching themselves went through those same nerves.
Yeah. It was a pressure industry.
Oh.
It wasn't just a pressure from the